Hello everybody. Welcome to my somewhat updated PvP tier list for Final Fantasy XIV. This is patch 6.11. My last video, it's been a while since I made my last video, so decided, hey, might as well give my updated opinions on where I believe these jobs stand at this point. There is going to be a patch soon, a 6.2 patch, which will change all of this up. But this is basically the end of Season 1. Well, Season 1 ended a couple weeks ago, but we're going on to Season 2, and there's going to be a mix-up in the meta. But I want to be able to play that patch for a bit, and then I'll probably come back and give my opinions once I have more experience fighting during that patch when it's live. So right now, this is my opinions going into the patch. It's changed. Surprise, surprise. My opinions have changed since my first video, which was at the very beginning of Season 1. And there have been a few patches here and there that changed things up a little bit. So let's go ahead and get right into it. There's been drops in rankings. There's been a couple ascensions in rankings. There are some jobs that have stayed right where they were the whole season. So let's go ahead and get into it. Just letting you guys know that this comes from somebody who has been PvPing since the release of the Crystalline conflict. This is only going to be for Crystalline conflict. This is not going to be for front lines. Front lines is completely different. So this is just going to be for CC. Okay. All right. So we're just going to go in order here. We're actually going to start with the tanks. Okay, because I feel like the tanks have gotten a really big shift, the biggest shift overall. So we're going to start with the tanks. Let's start with Paladin. Okay, so Paladin has received a couple adjustments, mostly in its defensive capabilities. They reduced its the way it takes damage without increasing any of its offensive capabilities. Last time, I do believe I ranked Paladin in the A tier, and I still do believe Paladin belongs in somewhat of that area, though it's a little more difficult to play Paladin correctly now. It's a very hard job to really shine in without your teammates' knowledge of your positioning and where you should be in fights. They also need to be aware if you guard them, so they can take advantage of that. So it requires a lot of finesse, not only from you, but your allies as well, and that's really hard to do sometimes in CC. So I had to drop it from the A rank that I received last time down to a B. Still pretty strong, but it requires a lot of work in order to get the full potential out. It also its damage is just not as strong as the other takes, and in this meta that we have right now, I feel like damage is king. So with that said, we're going to go on to Warrior. Warriors didn't receive a lot of changes. Warriors so far have maintained their spot as the disruptive tank. They can stun, they could yank you, they can pull you. They have a lot of abilities to keep you, a person locked down or a group locked down. Their LB is still incredibly strong. It's hard to really... I don't want to understate that LBs in this game, especially for tanks, are for the most part really powerful. Like the Paladin LB, Hollow Ground, still really strong, but it's not a thing that's going to make or break your CC fights for the most part. There are a couple exceptions in here, but for the tanks, they're strong, but they're not overly so. Warrior just hits that spot where it's strong enough to claim a decent spot on your team in terms of viability, just because of the disruption it brings, and because it deals decent damage. It deals more damage than the Paladin, and it has more presence when in terms of their limit break. So I'm going to place the Warrior in the A tier. I still think it is one of the strongest tanks to play right now, if you're going to pick a tank. Next we got Dark Knight. Now Dark Knight overall didn't receive too many changes. It actually got buffed a little bit throughout the patches. So it is the strongest damage dealing tank. It has pretty okay defenses as well. It has a pretty good way to control enemies as well with the you can pull them towards you, you can pull a group towards you. And just for the first fact alone that it deals so much damage, it has to go in the A tier. Or, yeah, the A tier because of its damage potential and its disruption potential. Its LB is also incredibly strong. It's incredibly strong at delaying the capturing of your point. It's really strong at allowing your team to regroup and get back on the point when it matters the most. So overall, Dark Knight, very good tank to play if you're going to pick a tank. Gunbreaker. Oh boy. Gunbreaker. Okay, so Gunbreaker has gone through a few changes. Mostly buffs, right? Trying to get it into a place where it is playable. Beforehand, it was completely... Well, you saw a Gunbreaker on your team and you're just like, oh, well, this is going to be rough. And for the most part, unfortunately, that still holds true. Gunbreaker's playstyle is completely different compared to these other three. I wouldn't even really classify Gunbreaker right now as a tank, even though it's blue. You are not very good at taking damage. You are very squishy. However, your damage potential is higher than the other three on single targets and sometimes AoE situations. But again, it's very situational. You would play a Gunbreaker mostly like an assassin. So you generally want to single target somebody out and take them out as quickly as possible. But you are very vulnerable to all types of CC, and you're squishy. So because of that fact alone, and because the fact that you have to charge your LB for a full 5 seconds, if you want to have its full effect, it's really hard to play Gunbreaker efficiently, and just because of that, it's going in the D tier. It hasn't moved at all. If you're going to play a tank, I would recommend playing the other three, because your instincts as a player and as a tank player is you're going to want to be front line, and you're going to want to do a lot of control of the enemy team, try to control the enemy team. And these three tanks are way better at doing that than the Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker just needs overall to be changed in some way to make it more viable. Either give them better defensive capabilities or change the way they play, because it's really hard to do well as a Gunbreaker. I would say out of all of these tanks, I've seen the least successful Gunbreakers in Crystalline conflict. Like the Paladins can do hit or miss. Warriors and Dark Knights are generally pretty good to see because they could do things other than like they could do abilities to really control the match. where as Gunbreaker, you're pretty much a lone wolf on a battlefield of 9 other people, and so the play style is really conflicting. Okay, so that's it for the tanks. Let's go ahead and go switch over to the green DPS, aka the healers. So we're going to start with White Mage. So White Mage is still incredibly potent, incredibly powerful job. It has not really received too many changes. It's reduced. They reduced the LB power just a little bit, but it still charges just as fast, and it still does the stun. It still does the buff for your team. It's still incredibly potent. They still have Polymorph, which is the uncleansable CC. It was an S tier, without a doubt, last time I made the tier list. And it's still, in my opinion, an S tier job. Just not, like, if there was an S minus on this list, it would go there. But it's still an S tier job for me. Just because of your toolkit, it's unmatched. You basically have everything that you need to win a game on White Mage. You have the potential to boost your team to victory just by playing a White Mage. So for that fact alone, I still do believe it belongs in the S tier. We have Scholar next. Scholar has received not too many changes, really, even though we do believe it is one of the weaker healers. There are times where it's very hard to take down a Scholar, because if someone knows how to play a Scholar, the shielding potential is very, very high. Unfortunately, their damage potential is just incredibly low. You might see Scholars on top of the damage lists, but all that damage, or most of that damage, comes from them spreading their dot around. And that may be annoying, and it might be clutch sometimes, but it's incredibly unreliable because you can't really control that damage. It's not something that you can single target out and like condense into a target, where in PvP burst damage really is king. So for that, we're gonna put Scholar in B tier. It's not terrible, right? It's not terrible. But it definitely is not up there with White Mage in terms of potential, in terms of swinging a game in your favor. It'll be much easier to do that as a White Mage than a Scholar. We're pretty much going by the White Mage standard here. And Scholar needs to be lifted up just a bit if they ever want to reach that. Astrologian. So, Astrologian has received a couple changes. Nerfs, actually. Their gravity no longer does a AoE bind. Now it only binds the first target you hit, and it'll slow everybody else, which is pretty big. Having a giant AoE bind was incredibly potent. But that's basically the only change they've gotten. So if you knew how to play an Astrologian beforehand, the gameplay is basically the same. You do deal a lot of damage. You can do a lot of support with your cards, and your LB is situational, but it can be incredibly good at stopping pushes. It's a delayed AoE damage reduction for your team. So if you use that correctly, it can be pretty powerful. But again, we're going by the White Mage standard here, right? So comparative to a White Mage, Astrologian just falls behind just a bit. But they can be incredibly strong. And I always like having Astrologians on my team. I feel like Astrologian players are incredibly adept at adapting, and I found most of them to be very, very good players as well. So if you want to play Astrologian, I highly do suggest doing so. It's a very fun job to play. I'm going to place it... Again, if there was a B+ tier, it would go in a B+ tier, but we don't have that, so it's going to go at the top of B. Not quite at A, not quite there, but still, I think, very good. Sage. Okay. Sage hasn't received too many changes either. Which is really surprising to me because I thought that Sage would be pushed around all over the place, but they haven't. They've pretty much remained consistent throughout the first season and going into the second season. Still has great damage potential. Its LB is still absolutely incredible. Very, very, very strong overtime tool. If you just save the LB and don't use an LB the entire game and just save it for overtime, you have a very good chance of either finishing off the game or coming back, depending on how much you're getting pushed back. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but if you have to, that's always an option. Its problem lies, obviously, with its healing. It can't really heal as much as the other jobs, and it requires a little bit more finesse to play in that case. But if you can play a Sage well, you can pretty much be a tank. You are really tanky. Assuming you put Cardia on yourself, which I think you should do. Because you can always gauge how much damage you're taking, and you can always adjust how much damage you need to do to heal yourself, etc. There's less things you need to worry about if you just Cardia yourself. So, assuming you're doing that, I feel like Sage is one of the stronger healers. But again, we're going by the White Mage standard. Can you turn games around with Sage? Yes. You absolutely can. The LB is incredibly strong, as I said, and the damage potential is there. So I believe Sage has a leg up over the other two healers just a bit, just by a little bit, but doesn't quite reach White Mage status. But overall, very, very good healer. Green DPS, sorry. All right. So those are the healers. Let's go ahead and move on to the DPS. Let's start with casters, shall we? So we're gonna start with. Okay, let's not start with Black Mage. Let's start with Summoner. Okay, so Summoner is my main job in PvP. If you come by and see me PvPing, I will more than likely be playing a Summoner. Just because it's overall very balanced and it doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. And you can buff your teammates in a way that's very impactful for a match. So you can't really do that a lot as DPS, help a teammate succeed. But if you do play a Summoner, you can do that very easily with its shield. If you notice, and the enemy team single targeting one of your frontline DPS or tanks or somebody who got caught out, you can shield them. The Radiant Aegis is incredibly powerful. Basically gives them a giant shield and damage reduction for 10 seconds. I've saved plenty of people using that. It has one of the most powerful LBs in the game in terms of Bahamut. You just place it down on the field when your team's about to engage, and the enemy team basically starts that engagement at half health. In addition, you can hit Akmorn, which is a giant AoE burst. You are a burst cannon. Your Ifrit form is a burst cannon. Your Titan attack is a form of CC, though it's not incredibly potent. It is still strong. It's a bind and a slow all around the bind target, kind of like the gravity for Astrologian. And the Slipstream, while it has a long cast time, can be powerful as a way to control a zone. Overall, just an incredibly balanced DPS. I don't think it belongs in the S tier, because yes, you can swing games, but you have an obvious weakness. You're squishy. you're probably the squishiest target in the game. So if your positioning is not perfect and you get targeted out, you're going to die, and you're going to die a lot. So because of the fact that you need to have a lot of environmental awareness, and you need to focus on more than just killing the enemy for Summoner, it doesn't have that user-friendly type of vibe to it. However, if you do decide to play and main Summoner, I would highly recommend doing so, because once you learn how to play Summoner, it's incredibly potent. I'm going to place it up here in the A tier. Very, very strong. Next we have the... We're going to say Black Mage for last. Next we have Red Mage. Oh boy. Red Mages. How far the mighty have fallen. Red Mages were easy S tier at the beginning of the Season 1. They were incredibly potent in so many categories. Now, I'm placing Red Mage in B. And I'll tell you why. The PvP meta has shifted to such a bursty and single target down. As soon as someone goes out of position, single them down and kill them type of meta, that Red Mages struggle in melee. I talked to you how I talked about how summoners are very squishy. Red Mages are pretty close to that. They don't even have a shield for themselves, and they must get 3 melee attacks off every single time they want to do their burst. So keep that in mind, that you're in a game where you have to consistently engage in melee combat as a squishy caster without an ability to defend yourself. So you're basically playing Red Mage as an assassin like you should, right? But if you're even... You have to engage in such risky business every time you do that. It is so difficult to even do your basic job of dealing damage sometimes. And in the upper ranks, people are not going to let you get away with that. As soon as you jump in, everyone's going to target you. And they're going to make your life hell. You had a tool before they nerfed you, like you would dash to your target and they would do 20% less damage to you, and you would do 20% more damage to them. So you would kind of have a way to kill them really quickly and get out. But that has been nerfed. That's been cut in half. You only have a 10% damage reduction, which is basically nothing. And then you have a 10% damage boost against the target, which again, it's incredibly minimal. It's crazy how one small nerf plus a shift in how people engage in combat can bring down such a mighty job, because this job used to be nuts. It used to be insane, and now it's just a shadow of what it used to be. It's not absolutely terrible, but if you play a Red Mage, you'll understand what the struggle of being a melee is, because you're going to engage in melee a lot, and people are going to fiend for you, and you really need to watch yourself. Ooh, okay, let's move on to Black Mages. So, Black Mage. Black Mage has gone through a ton of changes. It's gone through a overpowered godlike phase where it was an easy S tier. That was like a month ago. About a month and a half ago. Where if you would encounter a Black Mage every single game on both teams. Why? They were busted. Absolutely busted. You looked at a black mage and they would freeze your entire enemy team. You looked at a black mage and they would blow you up without you even understanding what is happening. They got buffed to hell. Since then, they've been brought back a bit. You cannot freeze an entire enemy team just by looking at them, and their defenses were brought back just a little bit. So, because of that, they're no longer an S tier. However, I do think they are a very, very powerful contender in Crystalline Conflict. They belong in A. These two right next to each other, it's perfect. Summoners and Black Mages are basically on par with each other right now in terms of power. And in terms of skill ceiling, if you play, you need to play both of these well, but if you do play both of these well, you will make a significant impact in every Crystalline Conflict game you play. Can't really go wrong with these two. So let's move on to the range DPS, okay? So we're going to start off with Dancer. Dancer has seen a few buffs here and there, which has brought up their game just a bit, and Dancer's LB has the ability to completely swing games, depending on how you use it. It does require your team to be a little bit cognizant of where the Dancer is, right? So because of that, because it relies a little bit more on your team, you got to bring it down a bit, because that's considered, I consider that a negative rather than a positive, especially with how limited your ability to converse with your team in Crystalline Conflict is. But it has good AoE damage. It has good potential to cause games to swing. So it's not completely terrible. It's not great. So we're going to place it in the C tier. Our first C tier job. It's all right. Definitely can use a little bit of buffs. Probably on its damage potential. Maybe make its LB a little more user friendly, so you don't have to be in melee and channel it. At least as long. But it's all right. It's okay. Next we have Machinist. Now, Machinist used to be my main job in terms of Crystalline Conflict, in terms of PvP. I still play it occasionally. I think it's a good job. I think the damage that it provides is very, very potent. But that's basically all it can do. It can provide damage, which in a damage-heavy meta is good. But other than that, you're going to have a hard time controlling enemies. They're just going to be running around all over the place. They're going to be running all over you. Bioblaster still requires you to be in melee range, which is incredibly risky, but you need to use it because you need your gadget gun to switch. Its LB is still strong, but it can be guarded. It just doesn't have the team play aspect to it, where you can't snowball while playing a Machinist. You can kill somebody, and yes, that is good. But killing somebody, killing one person, engaging in a team fight, and you just kill one person and the rest are just kind of fighting, and everyone is still doing their own thing. You're out of juice, which basically takes you out of the fight for a bit as the enemy is respawning. It's really hard to swing games as a Machinist, so I believe Machinist belongs in B. Good, but not amazing. Shotgun is really cool, though. Shotgun can win you games in overtime if you blast them out of the point. But anyway, that's enough about Machinist. Machinist is fine. Could use some buff somewhere, but it's alright. Next we have Bard. So Bards I find incredibly powerful. Very, very strong team presence. You buff your teammates constantly with your LB. You have great escape tools in terms of a jump back with a bind, which can be used offensively as well to help your team secure kills. It's on demand, so it has great synergy with your team You can do this all on your own. You just need to pay attention to the battlefield and and see what your teammates are doing, and you can help them out. You can help them secure kills with your bind, with your silence, and you even have really great burst potential because your Imperial Arrow did get buffed, so your burst is actually going up. So out of all three ranged, I do think Bard is the strongest ranged DPS. It belongs in, I do believe it belongs in A tier. You can do incredible work as a Bard. If you are going into Crystalline Conflict and you're thinking about playing a ranged job, I would say learning Bard is your best bet. I'm not saying these two can't get you wins or you can't do well. I'm just saying that as a Bard, you will more than likely be successful. And it's a lot easier to manage as well than these two. A lot more user-friendly. I hate being silenced by bards. And they always do it right when I need to escape, and I die. It happens all the time. Incredibly good at securing kills. Alright, now down to my favorite jobs. The melee DPS. Oh boy. The melee. Let's start off with one of my favorites. And you know who I'm talking about. We're talking about the monk. Okay? The fist fighters themselves. What can I say about monk? Now, when I first started playing Crystalline Conflict, monks, I believe, were the lowest ranking. Incredibly weak throughout the entire game, but when they get their limit break, Meteor Dive, you can make someone's life hell. Especially if they're a caster. Especially if they're a squishy caster. Especially if they're the squishiest caster in the game. AKA Summoner. AKA my main job. Monks are my bane. If a monk wants to kill me, I'm dead. I might as well sign the my will right then and there. I cannot escape a monk's wrath. Now, does that make them good? No. Not really. Again, we're looking at overall contribution to your team and pushing the crystal, right? Killing somebody is good. Very good. However, after that, you're a limp noodle. And you have the benefit of a low LB cooldown, yes. However, during that 45 seconds, 1 minute that you're fighting and you don't have your limit break, you're basically floundering. Or trying to pick off a kill off a teammate and you just won't be able to do anything. So because of your single target kill potential, I actually think monks got boosted. They didn't even receive that many changes, but just because how the meta has shifted and because how you do have that single target kill potential and monks at a higher rank will kill the squishiest target on the enemy team, it's going to go in B tier. Right next to Machinist. These two operate basically the same way. You try to kill a single target, you try to take them out of the game as much as possible. You'll find their playstyles actually incredibly similar. I still hate you guys. Not really, I love you guys. Just stop targeting me. Please. I beg of you. I want to live. Next we have Reaper. So, Reaper has received a couple buffs, but overall the playstyle of Reaper has not changed. You're still going to try to assassinate squishy targets and annoy the hell out of tanks. That's your main job as a Reaper. You have great dueling potential, but in Crystalline Conflict you're rarely dueling unless you're off at the side and away from the point, which you shouldn't be. I do think it is better than where it used to be. I still think the damage that it provides is a little on the low side, but they have a lot of disruption capability, and they have the only AoE CC, uncleansable CC in the game, and the LB is on a short cooldown. Reaper's going in B. Where before it was a D or C, if you're playing at a good level, if you're playing at a level of a high tier player, you can make plays as Reaper, and it can show. It can definitely show in games. And if it were a little stronger in its defensive capability and its maybe a little bit more damage, it would probably be an A tier. It just barely. It's just not quite there. Not quite there. But still, if you pick a Reaper right now and you learn how to play Reaper, I think you'll do great. Which is a far cry from when the season began. Sorry, this game mode. Not this season. Last season. Okay. Next we're moving on to Samurai. So, Samurai has in a really weird place. I placed it in A tier, I believe, last time. I believe Samurai is... And I know you guys might really despise me for this. I think Samurai is C. I think Samurai is the weakest melee job in the game right now. Now hear me out. The defenses on Samurai have been nerfed to the point where you cannot engage in melee combat too often, or as much as you would like to. The Samurai has no ranged option. So you must engage in melee. You must. Okay? Now, what do you gain while you're in melee? You have your AoE damage, which, quite frankly, is pretty weak, even if it's buffed by your blue Sen, the Moon Sen. Even if you do a spinning Moon Sen slash, that's 8k potency. That's not very strong. If you do the Kasha, which is the pink Sen, pink red Sen, you get a 5k heal per target hit. Not very strong. The AoE is not very big. And you have to already be in trouble for you to make use of that. It's not good. The only good one is the Ice Sen, the light blue one that binds enemy targets. That one's okay. But you can only get it once every 3 GCDs. And it's you're going to make... You have to put yourself at risk to do that. So, you're incredibly squishy, is what I'm trying to say. For all the melee, you have no escape option. None. You go into melee, you're in. The only way for you to escape is for you to dash into an enemy that's in your back line. Or guard and sprint. That's one of its biggest problems. Samurais have no way to defend themselves. And your gain is pathetic. Your Midare and your Ogi Namakiri both have cast times for potencies that aren't even that big. You don't have on-demand burst if your burst has cast times. And so that makes Samurai not only incredibly difficult to play defensively, it makes them incredibly difficult to play offensively. Their LB also, and why people are going to be like, oh, what about their LB? They can instant kill someone. One, it is the longest charging LB in the game. You will be lucky to get 2 per game. In addition to that, it's not guaranteed in the least. You have to be hit when you are guarding, which has a 30-second cooldown, and it only lasts 3 seconds on them. And you have to be able to use it, which means you can't be CC'd. And they have to be completely defenseless, no shields, no way to protect themselves. There's so many factors when it comes to using a Samurai's LB effectively, it cannot be even closely called reliable. And because it's not reliable, it's bad. It might look cool, it might sound cool, but the LB and the whole kit of Samurai is just, it's weak. It's incredibly weak. Samurai need some buffs. They need a buff to their main kit. They need a way to escape melee. They have a backdash in PvE. I have no idea why they got rid of that in PvP. That would make a huge difference. But we're just going to have to see as time goes on. But I do think Samurai is the weakest melee, by far. All right, let's see what we got next. I love Samurai, I really do. It's a job that really is it melds with me. I'm a Samurai main in many aspects of this game. So seeing it down here, it hurts me. I do hope something happens with Samurai and they get better. I would love to play Samurai in Crystalline Conflict main. I would love to. It's just not there at the moment. Alright. So now we're at the bottom. Let's head to the very top. Dragoon. Now, Dragoon, from what I have seen, has remained completely untouched throughout the whole last season and into this season. So therefore, with the bursty meta and how Dragoons play and how strong their LB is and how their game swinging potential and how they can be incredibly self-sufficient, they do have an escape. They have a backflip that transforms into a hard-hitting line AoE attack. It's an amazing kit. It has to go in high A tier. It's probably the strongest melee DPS right now. If it just had a little bit more on the defensive side, then it would be an S tier for sure. But its defenses are somewhat lacking. They have Horrid Roar, which is great, and it's an amazing tool. They still have small weaknesses that don't allow them to be pushed into S tier, but don't let that discourage you. If you want to play a melee and you're thinking about playing Crystalline Conflict and you're unsure of which job to pick, go Goon. Goon will not let you down. You can carry games with Goon easily. And the better you do with Goon, the faster you'll rank up, because this job is insanely good for PvP. Ninja. Now, Ninja's received a couple changes. mostly in terms of the way Shikuchi works, and I do believe they received a buff to their Huton. I do believe they received a couple buffs. I don't believe they received any nerfs. At least not that I'm aware of. But Ninja is still an incredibly potent melee. You don't really play Ninja as melee, as anyone in Crystal would tell you. Ninja isn't really a melee job. It might be classified as melee, but you're not going to be in melee for the majority of the game. You're going to be casting ninjutsu. You're going to be running around behind the enemy lines. You're going to be incredibly sneaky and stealthy. You're going to get assassination kills. Your LB is probably one of the best LBs in the game. Just for its domino effect ability. You assassinate one target and then it resets. You assassinate another target and then it's pretty much over. It's a 5v3, but you just pick them off one after the other. So if your team is good, you'll be able to just close that game out as a ninja very, very easily. And if you're good, well, you're going to cause havoc upon the enemy team. I do think it is one of the strongest melees right now. I do believe it belongs in A tier. Probably like here. So, overall, the tier list hasn't really changed that much. Samurai went down a lot. Paladin went down a little bit. Red Mage is the one that got absolutely crushed. Monks have gone up. Reapers have gone up. So things haven't shifted too much. But there is a patch coming soon. So with that patch, things might get rocked to the left and to the right. And we might see a completely different list next time around. But as of right now, this is my tier list for Crystalline Conflict for 6.1. We're going into 6.2 in a couple weeks, and I'm going to be, of course, playing Crystalline Conflict during that patch. I'm going to see how the changes to the jobs shift things around, and I will still be trying to rank through Crystal. If you want to catch me during my live sessions, I do stream over on Twitch. I'll leave a link in the description to my Twitch below if you want to come by and say hi. If you want to discuss anything that I've placed here. Or if you just want to support me and say, good luck with those monks. I hope they don't destroy you today. Spoilers! They will. But thanks guys for checking out my video. If you have any comments, any suggestions, or any final or any thoughts about it at all, just let me know. I would be happy to hear from you guys. I know it's been a while since I've created a video, so this is just kind of like an update video to let you know I am alive. And I'm still going to be creating content here on YouTube. I've just been focusing a lot on my Twitch channel recently, and I've been trying to grow my Twitch. So if you can't catch me here, just I'll definitely be live over there. I stream almost every day. Hopefully I'll see you there. Thanks a lot, guys, for checking me out. Again, this is all just my opinion. I know some people can get pretty heated about these things, but it's all in good fun, guys. It's all in good fun. So until my next video, I will see you guys again very soon. Oh, I forgot Blue Mage. S. There you go. That's it. That's the ticket. Oh no! Sorry. I messed it up. B for Blue Mage. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the ticket. All right, I'm done. Bye, everybody. See you on the next video.